Brave and Her podcast, where we inspire, empower, and motivate by sharing our stories of bravery. I strongly believe that by sharing our stories, we open ourselves to healing, but also serve to give hope and inspiration to those who are dealing with a tough situation. We will talk about all topics under the sun. Now let's hear your stories of bravery. Thank you for being here in today's podcast. In today's podcast, we have Felicia Distad. She is the host of Team Vasculitis podcast, and she is here to talk about body image and chronic illness, what it looks like for her, and kind of like what it looks like for me too. We both have chronic illnesses, and even though they're different chronic illnesses, some of the side effects or some of the things that we go through are very similar. So we're just going to have a chat about that. But do you want to just give a little brief intro, about yourself?
Sure, absolutely. Thank you so much for having me on. I feel so honored to come back on your podcast. And like you said, my name is Felicia Distad. I am 40 years old. I was diagnosed a little over a decade ago with a rare disease called granulomatosis with polyangiitis. It's a lot to say, but it's one of the 18 forms of vasculitis that affects my small blood vessels. Pardon me. I am very lucky to have be in remission and have been in remission for a long time, but am still very strongly dealing with the physical manifestations of both the disease and the medications that we have to be on to survive. I am one of the lucky ones. I got to be a mama of 2 girls after diagnosis. It is possible. And I also, like she said, I have my own podcast called Team Vasculitis, where we also talk all things chronic illness and really focus on helping and supporting people. I just want to say, and we can talk about it a little more later, but I officially launched a online course to support people with chronic illness and kind of teach you all the things that, doctors don't when they are like, here's your diagnosis, here's your medication, try not to die before I see you again in 3 months. And I'm really excited about that. My whole goal is health and wealth for the chronic illness community. And I appreciate the opportunity to come here and share.
And so I want to say that I've been very inspired by what you're doing. I think you're doing an amazing job. And even though yours is, your chronic illness is vasculitis, and that's what your main focus is, I feel like you are also including other chronic illnesses, not just, focusing so much on vasculitis, but making others feel included. I feel included in the posts that you make and the content that you put out.
Well, thank you. That is my goal, right? I do want to raise awareness for vasculitis and be there specifically for, my rare disease, because that's so hard. But like you mentioned, we have a lot of similar side effects. We're all on the same medications. We're all going through a lot of the same mental journey. And I feel like awareness for any chronic illness is a win for the entire community. And when you look at it, 1 in 6 Americans has a chronic illness. 1 in 4 Americans has more than one chronic illness. So we're not there's a lot of us, and we're not represented anywhere. And I think it's time to change that. And that's a big thing about what I want to do is help our loved ones. A lot of people have a hard time articulating, right? Like what's going on or what's being said. In my background in marketing, I feel like I have a good way of like filtering that out. And I've had at this point thousands of conversations with chronically illness people, and giving them a space to be like, not only you, like you said, a community that you're included in if you have a chronic illness, but a place where you can be like, go follow this account to help understand what I'm going through. Yeah. And I have a good number of people who have done that. They've sent their best friends or their parents or their children to my account, and they ask me questions as well. I've been slowly trying to incorporate my husband in so that he could kind of give the perspective of the caregiver and the person who's trying to understand what's going on with your loved one, as opposed to just the sick person. So I appreciate that is you letting me know that is how it's coming across, because that's my goal, is to include everybody.
Yeah. So a little bit about me, for those that don't know, I was born with kidney disease. And at the age of 12, I received a kidney transplant, and I've had the kidney transplant for almost 26 years. So that's my, I guess, longest chronic illness. And then I also have endometriosis, which is also a chronic illness. There's no cure for it. Um, and yeah, so I just wanted to like say what I'm dealing with, just to have like some kind of context for what we're gonna talk about.
Absolutely. And I have adenomyosis. So the difference there for somebody who doesn't know, endometriosis can grow anywhere in your abdominal cavity, whereas adenomyosis is again the uterine lining cells growing where they shouldn't, but it's within the uterine wall. So it kind of, on imaging, it manifests looking like a fibroid, but it's not, and it's harder to deal with and harder to manage. You can't just go in and cut it out kind of the way you can a fibroid if it's available. So it's much more invasive in your uterus and causes similar symptoms to
Oh,
endometriosis.
yeah.
So we definitely both have
Okay.
that in common. And honestly, a lot of research is showing that the lovely prednisone, especially for what it does to our hormones and our cortisol levels, could be a major trigger for that, and why women like us have both.
Yeah. And you know what? I was thinking that maybe prednisone was helping me with like the inflammation, but I guess not.
It can help you with the inflammation, but what it does to your hormones can trigger the endometriosis. So,
Yeah.
that's why it wouldn't happen for everybody, right? But whatever, again, goes on in our body that was going to trigger that happening, um, it can cause it to be like much more invasive or much more likely to manifest because we're on prednisone and are on it often or have been on it long term.
Right. So we're talking about body image and chronic illness. So
Mhm.
what does that mean to you?
When you get your diagnosis, and when you're, or even before you're getting your diagnosis, because it can take 7 to 10 years, right? And you're dealing with all of the changes in your body, you're losing your sense of self. But for us, a lot of times almost all of our symptoms are invisible. Even if they're not totally invisible, even if it's, some hair loss or a skin issue, or, those things are mostly invisible to the world, although we are very aware of them. But the body image part comes in that it becomes the physical manifestation of your invisible illness, and it takes its own mental toll. It makes it so that you are forced to literally physically face, if you look in the mirror or you look at yourself or you see a picture later of, wow, like that is the change in me, in a way. Like, I was coughing up blood, right?
Mhm.
Most people didn't know I was coughing up blood. I tried to be very discreet about it, didn't want to freak anybody out. Um, but they could see that I put on 140 pounds, right? They
Yeah.
could see that, and they couldn't really tell that I've lost a bunch of hair, right? I just wear my hair in a braid, or I wear my hair up. They couldn't tell that it wouldn't became really thin. But again, they could tell that I went from 140 pounds to 280 pounds in just over a year,
Right.
right?
Yeah.
And the judgments that come from that. So I know people who have gotten their treatments and it's changed their hair color or their hair texture. And, people will be like, oh, maybe you just went to the salon, right? But for you, it's, you can't change it, right? I can't get my old hair color back. Or if my hair was curly and now it's straight, I could go get a perm, but it's not the same. It won't feel the same and look the same and be the same. And so every time I see myself, that's why I'm not taking sides here on the Will Smith situation, but man, I feel for Jada, right? Like, she's not, even if she can rock the look of a shaved head, but she doesn't have that choice. That choice has been taken away from her,
Right.
and how it affects her body image and how it affects her in the world. And man, I love Chris Rock, but I might have slugged him myself for saying right? Like, I get he's a comedian and trying to say something funny, but not understanding the pain that goes with that as part of the awareness that we need. So for body image and me, it's that next level of acceptance, right? You've worked on accepting your disease, you've worked on accepting your new limitations. Now you can't work the same, or you can't chase your kids, or all of this stuff.
Yeah.
And you might get an okay place with that, and then you realize, well, I'm never going to get my body back the same way. It's never going to be the same. And having to accept externally and how the world interacts with you, right? Like 5'7", very athletic, toned, active person I was, to I still can't lose the weight. I've, like I said, I've been in remission a long time, and I still have 80 plus pounds on me. That's very obvious. That makes me really uncomfortable and makes me struggle with seeing myself in the mirror. So what about you?
Yeah, I was just gonna say that it's not only just like gaining the weight, but also you can try as hard as you want to try to like lose it, but it becomes really, really hard, especially when you're like on a medication like prednisone, where it kind of prevents you from losing that weight.
Right. Well, and I've been off prednisone for almost 3.5 years now, and still the answer I get from doctors is all, well, you're on prednisone for a long time. And it's like, what? So you're just kind of brushing it off, saying, well, it must have changed something in your body, right? I get the excuse when you're on it, but when I've been off for over 3 years and nothing has changed, there's something there that they're not looking at. But it's become, I am just now starting to kind of get to the place where sometimes I'm at peace with, this just may be how my body is now, right? I don't ever expect to be back to a size 8 like I was before. I've had 2 kids and it's been 10 years, but I'm not being able to lose any of the weight and some of the challenges that come with that, right? It causes issues in your joints. It causes issues in how you can work out. It causes issues in how you move and how you sleep. It definitely does not define your health. And I really want people to understand the nuance there, right? Because healthy at any size doesn't necessarily mean just because, you're big or you're healthy. But if you're doing the things to support your body to be as healthy as possible, your weight shouldn't be the main factor, right? Like,
Right.
my cholesterol is great. My blood work is great. My heart is great. My blood pressure has been an issue recently, but that's a new thing with a secondary thing we're trying to deal with. But before that, my blood pressure was amazing. Like, I was very healthy and 240 pounds when I should be 140 pounds, 160 pounds.
Right. Yeah, I'm having the same issues where, yeah, I'm overweight. Based on the what is it called, the scale thing?
The BMI.
Yeah, the
Yeah,
BMI.
BMI is a load of crap to begin with, but anyway.
It says that I'm obese based on that, right? But my cholesterol's fine. I've never had an issue with my cholesterol. My blood pressure here and there, like it goes up a little bit. It just depends on like how, like my stress level.
Well, and with your kidney situation, that's not surprising at all. That's a whole different thing than a marker of how healthy you are.
Right. And then like just other than my kidney, I consider myself healthy. I hardly get any, sick other than the normal kidney related stuff.
Mm-hmm. Same.
Or the endometriosis related stuff. But like the cold or the flu or something like that, I hardly get, and I'll knock on wood because I don't want to get it, right? But yeah, like you said, just because we have an extra pounds doesn't make us unhealthy, and it's because of the medication. And that's the thing I think a lot of people don't understand, that it's kind of out of our control. It's not kind of, it's totally out of our control. What these medications do to us and do to our body and our hormones, and is not just taking a pill. Like, for example, my medications, right? It's only 3 medications, and they're specifically for my kidney transplant. But doesn't mean that it's only going to affect the kidney, right? It affects everything. It affects everything else. My mental health, my emotional health, my physical health, you know, it affects a lot of things.
Absolutely. Yeah. Any medication that we're on can definitely do that. But and then there's the stigma though that you have to deal with, that if you have a chronic illness, and I think because most people only think of like, you know, diabetes or something like, oh, you're sick, right? So if you have a chronic illness and you're overweight, people in general, and again, this is why we need awareness, feel like it's your fault. Well, if you ate better, if you worked out, if you took more pride in yourself, if you cared about yourself. When I was my heaviest, a little over 280 pounds, um, I had gone back to school when I first got sick. And I was at San Francisco State here in California, and I would take the elevator, right? Because I was really sick. I was still really sick. I was trying not to cough up blood, you know, where I was still dealing with how much prednisone can I be on. The first treatment that is recommended for my disease, we talked about before we jumped on here, Rituxan or rituximab, same thing, does not work for me, but it was the number one recommended. So we spent over a year trying to get that to work, because studies show it could take a couple of rounds. So I was very sick, because on top of being so sick, now I've been on prednisone 40 to 60 milligrams for over a year and have all of that going on.
Why?
A lot. Well, I mean, again, I was in a wheelchair and coughing up blood. Like, we really had to rein it in. And so overall it was worth it. But people would say horrible things to me, like, well, if you took the stairs, maybe you wouldn't be so fat and you'd be healthy. Or if you cared about yourself, you would work out, you wouldn't be so heavy. What are you trying to just die? Like, I'm like, literally, I am fighting harder than you can imagine to live, and you're judging me because of my weight. You have no idea. Like, I'm very blessed. Northern California, born and raised in the heart, in the world of local organic eating, right? Sonoma County. So I've just always eaten that way. And I really believe that played a big part in me being able to get back into the health that I have been blessed to have, because my body was so strong and didn't have a lot of other complications because of the way I was raised. I really believe that. But again, like, I'm sure I ate better than most of those people on campus. I'm sure my whole life I took better care. I never smoked. I literally never did any drug, never even tried pot, even in Northern California, right? Like, I never did anything. And this still happened to me, right? I wasn't sexually promiscuous. I wasn't any of the things they try and say, like, oh, well, you were that. I wasn't that.
Well, I was born with my disease, so what's
right
there, you know?
Maybe they'd blame your mom. I don't know, but like, it has, in their minds, it has to be your fault, right? Because I think part of that is, one, again, lack of awareness. And I think what they're most aware of is, again, something like lung cancer or diabetes, where you do have some control in the manifestation and in the healing from that, right? But the other thing is that it's really scary beyond what they can manage to believe that it could happen to them. Right? I must have done something to trigger it. Otherwise, if I didn't, oh my gosh, it could happen to me.
Yeah. And you know, it can happen to like the healthiest person. Like, I know someone who is very healthy, very active, and she still has a high blood pressure.
One of the people that I had at the Team Vasculitis Patient Symposium, his name is Roger, and he is a professional weightlifter, like a competitive weightlifter and trainer, and was diagnosed with a form of vasculitis, a much more aggressive form than what I have. And, you know, he certainly was living a healthy life, right? Like, that's not what triggered it. We don't actually know what triggered it. We don't know how much of it is genetic and how much of it is environmental. So no, it's not my fault. Like, I really believe mine was triggered from my physical response to when my dad died. And a lot of people go, you know, like, trauma can't do that. Yes, it can. There's great studies about it. But also, like, I can track it back to that. But I didn't make my dad die. So if that is what triggered it, is it my fault? Right? Like, there's just not the understanding. And so the other thing I see that is a really big issue because of this lack of understanding is that we, as chronically ill people, really fall into, I should be grateful that I'm alive, right? I shouldn't be upset that I'm losing all this hair and I'm losing even more of my identity, or I've put on all this weight and I don't even, like, I put on so much weight so fast. If I wasn't careful, if I caught my reflection in a mirror, it would scare me because my brain didn't compute that that image was me. So it's like, oh my gosh, she's next to me. And it would happen, like, I would get up super early to go to school, like I said, and it would happen at like 5 o'clock in the morning in the bathroom. I had to train myself not to look in the mirror, or I would terrify myself because my body changed so much. My brain didn't recognize it as me.
Yeah. So like it's not just like the the physical aspect of it, but just your body image also comes from your emotional and what you see, right? It affects, like I said, going back to what I said earlier, it literally affects like your emotional, your mental, and your physical. It's not just one thing and that's it.
Well, and like you just said, it affects your mental and your physical and your emotional, because now we're already beating ourselves up, right? Most of us do blame ourselves for a long time for getting sick. We ask, why me? We look about, what did I do to trigger this? All of that. And then you're getting those external messages. People are telling you, if you're still sick, you're not trying hard enough, or have you tried this? Or maybe if you ate better, like if you have a piece of pizza in public and you're 200 pounds, you get those looks and people feel guilty. And you're like, you know what the last time I had gluten or dairy was, or sugar, right? Like, it's been over a month. When was the last time you did? 5 minutes ago? Like, but if you're skinny, even if you're super unhealthy, like my little sister, not to throw her in the bus, she's worked really hard to get healthy, but when she was younger, she's 5'2", she weighs 100 pounds soaking wet. Like, she's super tiny. I'm 5'7", I'm much bigger than her. And she lived off of coffee and cigarettes. Like, basically that was her, right? So I got sick, but I was always significantly healthier than her. I took better care of my body, and she doesn't have any of these chronic issues yet. Right? She's only like 36. It could happen. But if we were walking down the street and I'm 200 plus pounds and she's an itty bitty little twig, people are going to assume I am making poor decisions and am not taking care of my health, and I don't care. And look at her. Why doesn't she use her as an example?
Yeah, it's so true.
And again, the reverse was true, right? I was taking excellent care of myself and she was not. Right? So just the perception. And so we're dealing with that all the time. Or the other one that we really struggle with is hearing, at least it's not cancer. Right?
Oh,
At least it's not cancer. And so you're like, oh, I shouldn't feel guilty about the fact that I have this weight on me, or that I bleed so heavily every cycle that I cannot leave the house. I think most of your audience is probably female, so I'm just going to share, like, with my adenomyosis, even though I had a uterine fibroid embolization to cut off the blood supply, and my surgeon was very, very aggressive, I still bleed through the largest tampon on the market and a pad every 45 minutes to an hour for 2 days. No stop. As soon as my period starts, every hour, day and night, no sleep, no nothing. I just hemorrhage blood.
Oh my gosh.
And I didn't do anything to make that happen, right? And I do a lot of things to try and make it not happen.
Was this happening before you were diagnosed and treated?
Mm-mm.
So do you think maybe it's part of like the side effects of the medication?
I think it's a part of the prednisone, like I said. I might have already been genetically predisposed to it, because I know I have some like great aunts and grandmas that had issues. And of course, back then they're not alive to ask. And I know they all had hysterectomies. And I'm not really willing to go there yet, because of every decision we make, we have to look at all of the things. And if we go in and remove my uterus, they have to cut a bunch of healthy tissue that could result in needing a lot more surgeries. And I'm only 40, right? They want to wait till you're more like 60 to do something like that. So as long as I can hold it off, I'm going to, especially because if I need to be on prednisone, It has issues with our ligaments, and again, that would result in the need for more surgery. So I'm just kind of dealing with it for now, but that's not something anybody knows. They don't know that I have to plan my entire life around the 2 days of my period that I bleed like that.
Yeah, same here. Literally I have to plan around my period, because I don't know if it's going to be a bad period or a good period, and a painful, or sometimes I'm getting high fevers, and so I have to like plan around it and plan to
Yeah.
not do anything during those days.
Yeah, I mean, I've seen amazing results. I'm going to plug Alyssa Vitti. If you haven't heard of her, her book, wow, In the Flow, FLO, really was a game changer for me. Of course, I'm still bleeding heavy, but I have better energy in between my periods. I don't have any pain. I don't have any bloating. I don't have any breast pain. Like, it took care of all of that. I didn't have a lot of this, but I don't have any of those things because I have made some of the tweaks that she recommends to support my body hormonally, and it made a big difference. And I had a lot of doctors tell me basically it wouldn't.
Okay.
Don't even get me started on the clinical medical industry. But people don't understand, and people like, it makes people judge me more, that if I have to be like, oh, I can't do that, and a friend or somebody pushes me for why, I'm pretty honest, or if they listen to the podcast, I'm like, because I'm going to be hemorrhaging blood, right? Like, I need access to a bathroom every half an hour. I can't go to the park for 5 hours. I just can't. Right. I had somebody basically stop being my friend because I didn't go to their 30th birthday party a long time ago. But because like I was hemorrhaging blood, I'm like, I can't drive to San Francisco. You don't understand. I'd have to stop twice, and I can't be at your party with 50 people. I need access to a bathroom that I can't wait.
Yeah. And then also like your energy, I don't know if for me, I have really low energy because then again, you're bleeding a lot.
Bleeding and not sleeping.
Yeah.
For me, like so your triggers, something can still trigger it.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
And so having the ability to have people in your life who get it, who don't feel like, oh, you're just making it up, or you just want attention, or all of those things. And then unfortunately, we even doctors aren't much better, right? A lot of doctors, like, I literally had a doctor. I went to an endocrinologist. I tell this story a lot because it is just astounding to me. At UC Davis, one of supposedly the top medical places like in the world, I went to this endocrinologist, and I'm like, I have crazy heavy bleeding. I went off birth control and put on 40 pounds. My throat closes up when I swallow. I have this weird coughing thing that the ENT says is hormonal. Like, I have this long list, like 10 or 15 things of pretty intense, debilitating symptoms, some of which have physical manifestations that I'm clearly not making it up, right? It's not just, oh, I'm really tired, right? There's physical manifestations. And her response to me was, well, have you tried eating 1,200 calories a day?
No.
I'm like, okay, I'm 5'7", I work out, like I gave you my meal plans. I gave you everything because I track it all to try and figure out what's going on. And your only response to me was literally something that somebody my height and my weight working out at the level that I do would put me in the hospital. Like, that was your recommendation.
I can't believe that he or she said that. Like,
yeah. Which makes it worse. And she was just very dismissive. And again, she's supposed to be practicing at one of the most reliable places in the country. And I just walked out of there so brokenhearted and upset because it was one of those like, oh my gosh, I finally got this appointment. I waited all the months for it. It was on my birthday, so I thought that was going to be a good sign. And instead, I just walked out in tears, and it was miserable. And I worked really hard to recover the day. But so when the whole world is essentially against us other than each other, it is so hard. And again, I just always come back to awareness and people doing things like what you're doing here and sharing our stories, and even in just spreading awareness within your immediate sphere, right? Whoever it is you talk to on a regular basis, the friends that have managed to stick by you, children, spouses, if they haven't, spousal divorce rate is significantly higher if the woman gets a chronic illness the divorce rate goes up to, I think, like 65 or 70%. If the man gets a chronic illness, the woman sticks it out, but that's a whole other cultural issue. So there's just this perception that we're not doing enough, and then it's too hard. And that, again, the toxic positivity of all of this stuff, and that can be combated by being honest with the people in our lives. And I know that takes energy we don't always have, but if I'm honest with my husband and I'm like, I just cannot today. I do not have the energy. Or if I do not have a nap, I am going to end up hurting myself in some way, or I'm going to like not be able to talk about it. Your husband might understand what you're going through on a different level than he did before. And just that little change that affects the next level out. Again, there's so many of us, right? There's hundreds of thousands of people with chronic illnesses dealing with this. And that would be the change that we need to be taken seriously by doctors, to be taken seriously by therapists. You know how many people have told me that like their therapist is clearly just reciting crap out of a textbook. I actually had one woman tell me that then her therapist later an old therapist, she left her, developed a chronic illness and sent her a message and apologized. She apologized for the crap she was spewing about how she needs to do whatever. I don't know what their conversations were, but the therapist apologized because she just didn't understand. And she's like, the textbooks are so wrong. They just don't know.
Yeah. And I think a lot of people don't understand how much we need therapists because, going back to the medication, it has emotional and mental changes because of the hormones and all this stuff, right? And even if you're like the toughest, because I thought I was like the toughest and bravest person, right? Because I'm like, oh, it's not gonna, my disease is not gonna face me because this is all I know. Right. I was born with it. Is all I know. And there came a time where I just hit a wall. Mm-hmm. And everything like just started piling up, and I'm like, where's all this, where all this like emotions are coming from? Like I've never felt this way. And this was actually in 2017, 2018, where I got really depressed, and I had a lot of anxiety. I still deal with anxiety, and I always had anxiety, but I never thought it was anxiety because of the way that I was manifesting. I just thought, oh, that's just who I am, right? That's just how, I'm just particular with certain things and things like that, right? But no, I just come to find out that's actually anxiety. That's just the way that I manifest anxiety.
Right. You're particular about it because it gives you a sense of control.
Yes. Mm-hmm. Because I can't control my health, right?
Or anything.
Yeah.
No, I have so much more anxiety than I ever did before. Like I jumped on and went live on my personal account yesterday and talked about just seeing a new doctor. I was in tears in the parking lot because I'm so used to doctors telling me just being dismissive or not being helpful. There are a couple other things like it wasn't a space that I felt comfortable bringing my husband because we don't have childcare. Usually I schedule my appointments when they're in school, but it's summer. And we don't have any family close by. I wasn't going to drop them off at a friend's house at 7:15 in the morning. And I wasn't going to take them with me. Sometimes I do, but it's a cancer center. So I wasn't going to do that because I was seeing a hematologist, and I was in tears. I would never have been anxious about going to see a doctor or even just driving downtown to an office building I had never been to before because he was not in their normal office building for that appointment that day. Gave me anxiety. That would not have given me anxiety 10 years ago, right? Like I would have been like, cool, if I get lost, whatevs. But now it's just like everything feels so big because I only have so much energy. I only have so much emotional, so everything is overwhelming.
Yes. Yeah, like I remember growing up when I was little, ever since I can remember, when it would come time for a blood drawn, I would just like put out my arm and whatever. Right now, it gives me major anxiety because now, like, I've been using the same arm for the past 26 years, so now it's a struggle. So now, like, I just tense up which makes it even harder, right?
Yeah.
But even like doctors, I mean, I've had the kidney transplant for 26, almost 26 years. August 30th will be 26 years. And every time, I mean, every single time I go get blood drawn, I'm always like a little bit worried about what if it's, what if the results are not good? Even though like I'm stable, right? Even though doctors have told me your disease is progressing very, very slowly, if anything, right? But I always have that in the back of my head, like, what if I need another transplant now? What if I need to go on dialysis now? Or, especially now that like getting closer to like my kidney disease stage is like like later, like the stages later.
It's progressing.
Yeah, it's very slowly, but it's still progressing, right? I'm not gonna have this transplant forever, and I know this, but just it's scary.
I mean, I think that's really normal. I think I've talked to so many people, and I know I get, as soon as I get that blood draw, I start checking my phone every like 30 seconds to see if I have the stuff, because I've been sick enough long enough. I've done enough research. I have a phenomenal rheumatologist who has taught me how to read and interpret my blood work. So when I get the test results, even before I have that appointment, I'm like, okay, I'm good. But in the last year or so, a few things have popped up that were different. It spun me, like, and most of it turned out to be totally fine. But when it happened, I was like, panic attack time. Like, oh my gosh, what does this mean? Am I having kidney issues? What if I have to go off Imuran? There's not another good solution. I'm going to lose all my quality of, like, you just spiral down. And my doctor was like, no, see, because of this and this, and the ratio is fine. So it just means your kidney's working a little bit more, but the ratio is what it should be. So it's working fine. And I'm like, you needed to email me that a week ago when the test results came in, because it has been rough, right?
Any kidney questions?
I will shoot to you. Yeah, I did. I messaged my friend who, when she was diagnosed with the same disease, she was already at stage 4 kidney failure. She had no idea she was sick until she had the debilitating flank pain that sent her in. So I messaged her, and she's like, wow, those numbers are really high. I'm like, that was not helpful. That was not helpful.
And you know what? Sadly, that is the story for many people who are diagnosed with kidney disease. They don't know until it's too late, until they need to be on dialysis like now.
Right.
And that's why, I like to work with organizations that bring awareness about kidney disease. So
you do a great job of that. You do a really great job of that.
Thank you. So we can prevent that, because some of these cases where people have kidney disease are preventable, or if caught early, some of them could be reversible.
Right. And again, I'm just gonna, it always comes back to awareness, even with our doctors, on what to look for. I do have to say though, one of the things that I try and remind myself is other scary stuff, like developing a secondary issue or developing cancer or something, because I have so much blood work and such a strong baseline. My rheumatologist is like, yeah, if you started to get something like that, we'd catch it like right away, because we would see in your numbers something weird is going on and look more into it. Because I had a friend who had colon cancer and didn't know until her colon perforated and she ended up in the ER. And so my next doctor's visit, I was like freaked out, and he's like, that probably would never happen to you, and here's why. So that was a really helpful thing to hear.
Yeah, that's one of the things that we're working with the American Kidney Fund to actually I guess kind of require your physicals, every year your physicals have some kind of like kidney function test, so we can, detect it earlier.
Right.
Okay, so is there any advice that you want to give to someone who's dealing with a chronic illness?
If you're dealing with a chronic illness, I would say the number one thing you need is community. Finding people with your same disease is like a really special connection, But anybody with a chronic illness, I have some very close friends who our diseases are not even similar, but we are 100% support system for one another because they get it. And then the second thing would be to, whether you have the resources or not for therapy, if you don't, really do some reading and listen to some podcasts and start working on journaling, maybe for self-acceptance.
Yeah.
Because I personally really am a proponent for accepting yourself where you are and not giving yourself grace. Because if you're giving yourself grace, you're asking for forgiveness, and you don't need forgiveness for the state your body's in. Right. So working on that acceptance is huge. And again, it's a journey, right? One day I'm great and I'm like, whatever. I'm like, I don't care that I'm wearing 5 sizes bigger than these clothes I'm throwing away. And then the next day I'm like, I can't go in public looking the way I do. So I get it. It's not linear. But those would be the 2 biggest things, is really figuring out how to support yourself mentally and building that community.
I agree. For someone that's dealing with a chronic illness, like, you know, besides dealing with your chronic illness, the most important thing is dealing with your mental health.
Yes.
If, you know, reach out for help if you need it. Don't be ashamed. Don't be afraid. Reach out for help.
Absolutely.
Well, thank you so much, Felicia, for you know, sharing your experience. This was a great chat, and I hope it inspires other women or other, you know, just people to advocate for themselves and take care of their mental health and accept themselves just you know, as they are.
Well, thank you so much. You do an amazing job as well. Like, I admire how vocal you are about going through what you're going through. And like I said, joining you're not just talking the talk, you're walking the walk of spreading awareness and making the world a better place for people dealing with what you're dealing with. And that is so powerful. And I really appreciate it.
Thank you. And I will put her Instagram and her podcast and all the links and how to reach her in the description. And I will talk to you in the next podcast. Thank you so much for listening. I hope this episode inspired you. If you like this podcast, please share on social media and tag me on Instagram @TheBraveandHer. I would love to hear your stories of bravery.